Jim Poteet is an architect and the founder of Poteet Architects. That is a 13-year-old architecture planning and interiors office firm in San Antonio. The firm's work seeks to support the sustainable revitalization of downtown San Antonio. Give it up for that. The firm's designs have won regional as well as national awards, and they have also been published around the world. Please welcome Jim Poteet.
It's great to be here tonight with so many good friends. What Randy didn't say was that PechaKucha was started by a couple of architects as a way to keep their friends from going on way too long when presenting their work. Anyone who's spent any time in an architecture school understands what motivated those two. Already tonight we've seen that this format's evolved far beyond that original goal, but I'd like to use my time to honor and return to its roots. So I'm going to show slides of our design work while I talk really, really briefly about it. If the rules were flexible, which they're not, I'd show 10 times the pictures and use one-tenth the words. Architecture school was kind of an uncertain time for me, as I imagine it is for many, maybe some of you here tonight. In retrospect, I think for me, I felt really viscerally the disconnect between what architects were building and what they were saying and writing about it. Those clouds over me lifted gradually as I started working in offices and getting closer to actually building things. I realized that effective design was more the product of thorough research than original thinking. Our office is 13 or 14 years old, depending on how you count it, and we've been developing and honing this bias over that time. We've evolved a habit of not talking about our work or summarizing it or spending too much time trying to put into words what it's about. We've relied on the idea that the work should speak for itself. Because our office is downtown and because we're committed to the intensification of downtown San Antonio, much of the work that we've been asked to do, and have been having a lot of fun doing, by the way, involves the reuse of existing buildings, often adapting them to new uses. We found that this work suits our office personality, if you will, and is very satisfying. So when we begin a project, it's not with what-ifs or big ideas, but with the questioning and close examination of a concrete object that's right in front of us, the existing building itself. Carefully measuring and drawing that building is always our first step. We try not to impose our ideas on this existing container in the process. We really want to collaborate with it to accommodate the new use. If the building can maintain a certain kind of integrity in this process, the result is richer and more satisfying for it. This is surprisingly true even for buildings that are not historic or architecturally distinguished, or even very old. We often work in buildings that in other times would have been razed to make way for progress. There is so often poetry and subtlety and toughness in common, ordinary buildings, qualities that are sometimes hard to equal in new buildings with modern budgets and materials. We extend this frame of mind into the work of accommodating the new use, that which is contained in the finished project. The goal is to make the required insertions of systems seem simple, effortless, and composed, and to leave room for the qualities of the container to read through. Now, the bad news is that achieving this simplicity is an incredible amount of hard work. And worse still, it's work that, when complete, will not be visible. No one will see it. A story, we had a loft on an AI tour a while back, and one we were really proud of, and people seemed to really be enjoying. And a gentleman came up to me with a question, and I'll never forget, he asked, "So, what did you do here?" After I had time to think about it, I felt that this was an indication that we'd succeeded. Now, adaptive reuse is often treated implicitly and sometimes explicitly as a lesser endeavor than other types of architecture. And this is perhaps because of this relative invisibility when it's done well. Now, this is okay, and it hasn't lessened our satisfaction in doing this kind of work. And that's for a few reasons. First, counterintuitively perhaps, this is a very pure type of design. This type of work makes the process of designing within constraints explicit. Charles Eames, who's one of my design heroes, said, "Design depends largely on constraints, the sum of all constraints. Here's one of the few effective keys to the design problem, the ability of the designer to recognize as many constraints as possible, his willingness and enthusiasm for working within these constraints, the constraints of price, of size, of strength, balance, surface, of time. And this assessment seems to me to be just right. Second is the positive effect that a well-executed adaptive reuse project can have on its surroundings. It provides a healing, reconciling, yet at the same time a forward-looking gesture that knits together new and old. Third, it just happens that this more modest approach to design and redevelopment seems in tune with our times. We've been let down and left poorer by bolder gestures that sought to improve by more disruptive and wasteful means. Many of our projects have been dedicated to the display of contemporary art. And the approach that I've been sketching has turned out to be well suited for this program. The art collection is contained by the walls, which are more useful the less configured they are. Again, layers of systems, lighting, temperature, and humidity control, daylighting must all be coordinated to support this display and then stay the heck out of the way. The art completes the architecture which has made a place for it. The changing of the art continuously renews the container. Here at the Pace Foundation, a derelict auto body shop's lack of formal character made it a perfect receptacle for art both inside and out. Which brings us in just a few seconds to this literal container, adapted as a guest house a year or so ago. For over a year, we've been reeling at the overwhelming amount of notice this tiny project has received from all over the world. I'm sure that we've all seen hundreds of container projects, so I've been left asking myself, what is it about this particular project that's caught the imagination of so many people? In the end, all I know is that we applied the same process here as we would in repurposing a candy factory or an abandoned car dealership. The container retains its containerness. It hasn't been adapted out of existence. When we made alterations, and believe me, we touched absolutely part of this object, we worked hard to integrate them seamlessly so that ultimately the container and the contained merge into a new, greater whole. I'm lucky to share this work with a great group of people without whom none of this, of what you've seen, would be possible. I want to thank them and thank you.